In this video, I want to show you how the clinical eye tracker can reveal an otherwise hidden binocular vision problem. Throughout my professional career, I've come across many patients who report symptoms that are suggestive of a binocular vision problem. However, when I've applied the traditional range of binocular vision tests, I've drawn a blank. None of them show any significant problem. However, when you think about it, conventional binocular vision tests such as the cover test, Maddox rod, Maddox wing, fixation disparity, they're all very static. The patient is given as much time as they need for their fixation and binocular vision to stabilise. However, in the real world, our eyes are virtually never static. We spend all the time searching the visual field, making an endless succession of saccades with very short fixations in between. What if the individuals with these symptoms only have a binocular vision problem while they're performing a dynamic task? What if their binocular vision breaks down after making an eye movement and takes a while to stabilise? This would mean that they may show no problem when tested with conventional binocular vision tests, but they will struggle in the real world. Up until now, there's been no way to detect this type of binocular vision problem outside of a research laboratory. However, the clinical eye tracker measures the position of each eye 60 times a second, so should allow this sort of problem to be detected. And in this video, I want to show you some eye movement recordings for a patient who would seem to have a binocular vision problem, but only while performing dynamic tasks. The patient was 34 years old and complained of occasional double vision and frequent headaches while using his computer. He tried low plus glasses prescribed by a previous optometrist, but these had not resolved the problem. He showed a small esophoria at near but had no fixation disparity. His eyes were healthy and he had no significant refractive error and good accommodation and convergence. We measured his pattern of eye movements while performing two dynamic tasks, firstly reading and secondly performing a saccade task. So the trace at the top here shows his pattern of eye movements while reading a passage of text. And as you can see, he starts reading reasonably normally. If I just zoom in on this, this is a typical pattern of eye movements while reading, fixating a word, making a saccade to the next word, saccade, fixation, and then a big saccade at the beginning of the row, ready to take up fixation at the beginning of the next line. What is quite clear is that after just reading one line of text, he begins to show some rather abnormal patterns of eye movement. In particular, you can see here he's gone back to reread some words, and as it progresses, the pattern of eye movements gets more and more interrupted with these regressions where he's going back to read words. Now, it's very difficult to see why this might be the case on the face of it. But then if we look at his binocular vision, so if I click on binoc at the top here, and that enables me to show the individual traces for each eye. And this is where something quite interesting begins to emerge. So you can see that on the first row, the two eyes are pretty well coordinated. But by the time we get to the second row, there is a clear separation of the two eyes. In other words, he has developed an esotropia at this moment in time. So when he's forced to perform a demanding task like reading, his binocular vision is breaking down. You can see that also quite clearly on this second trace down. This trace shows the relative position of the right and the left eye. So if the two eyes are perfectly synchronized and both pointing at exactly the same point on the screen, then this should be just a straight line at 0. But you can see that actually this line is departing significantly from 0 at various points. If I click on auto scale, you can see that more clearly. So these points here are where he's actually developing an esotropia. You can also see that quite clearly if I just scroll along here, and you'll see that this graphic here is showing not only where he's fixing but the relative position of the two eyes. And you can see every now and then, and coming up to quite a large deviation here, you can see at that point there he has developed an esotropia of about 5 prism diopters, and then it recovers just about, and he reads a few more words, but then it breaks down again. There's another 3 prism diopters of esotropia there, and then there's a large breakdown here where he's up to 6 or 7 prism diopters of esotropia. So really very unstable binocular vision, and this is only apparent while he's performing a demanding dynamic task like reading. If we now get him to perform a different task, just a series of saccades, if I just go back to show the binocular movements and zoom everything back out, take auto scale off. Now this task here involves the subject looking from left to right between 2 letters, so looking from A to A, B to B, C to C. So it requires a succession of saccades, and you can see this is a patient with normal binocular vision, and you can see that they've performed the task very nicely, just looking from left to right to left to right, a series of saccades. And you can see that their binocular vision is quite stable. You quite often get these little spikes where the two eyes get slightly out of sync actually during the large saccade, but very rapidly binocular vision stabilizes. Now if I show you the same results for the patient with what we think is a dynamic binocular vision problem, again when you look at it binocularly, it doesn't look too abnormal. He's not fixating quite so accurately as the other patient, but the really interesting thing occurs when we start looking at what happens with each eye. So you can see what's happened here is immediately after completing the large saccade, binocular vision has broken down. It's almost as if one eye has overshot. So momentarily he has quite a large esotropia, and likewise here. So after these large eye movements, it's taking a little while for binocular vision to stabilize. And if I just run the cursor along so that we look at these points, and if you look at the graphic here, you can see exactly what's happening. This is looking from left to right, and at that point there it was slightly exo for a moment, but then it goes quite ESO, about 5 prism diopters of esotropia, and then it eventually stabilizes. And again, after the large eye movement from right to left, again there's a bit of exo there actually, which is interesting, and then going back in the other direction it goes ESO again, and what's happening here, a bit of ESO, and then it stabilizes. So this shows quite clearly that this patient has a fairly significant binocular vision problem, but it only seems to become apparent when he's asked to do a demanding visual task. Users of the clinical eye tracker are reporting many patients like this, patients who have symptoms but all the normal binocular vision tests draw a blank. And it is looking increasingly likely that there's a whole hidden subpopulation of patients with dynamic binocular vision problems. They simply have relatively poor eye movement control, and it takes a while for their eyes to stabilize after making an eye movement. as the eyes are more or less constantly in motion in the real world, these patients have a significant real-world binocular vision problem. I suppose the big question is, what can we do about it? And the short answer is, I really don't know. At the moment, clinicians are using their normal array of interventions, namely refractive correction, prisms and exercises. It's too early to tell if any of those are effective or if we'll have to hunt for some new form of intervention. However, the first stage in the process is to identify that there is a problem, and this is what the clinical eye tracker is allowing us to do for the first time.